I've had to take a different route putting the exhaust in because it didn't quite fit where I put it through there before. So it's got to go through underneath, which makes more sense and is more beneficial. So I didn't actually have to take all that A-arm and wheel assembly off, and I passed it through the underside of the frame instead with a bit of struggle, but I managed to do it in the end, as well as mark up the exhaust a little bit, which is not ideal, but it's good enough for it's for, to be honest. I also cut a tab off the frame that I'm guessing was the original exhaust mount. It was underneath the tank there, I believe I pointed out earlier. And I've cut that off, and I will be utilising it for either here or the other side to hang the new exhaust off, since this exhaust does not actually utilise this bracket underneath there. It literally bolts to the head and then to the frame at the back here. So as you can see, I started putting the engine in. I'm going to get that all installed, squared away first, because in order to mount the exhaust, I need the exact location for the engine to be in place, the chain aligned, and it to run true before trying to make any sort of brackets for the exhaust. Because if there's a misalignment and I need to adjust it down the line, then the brackets for the exhaust would cause an issue and put stress on the head, which is the last thing I want to do. So I'm going to get on with that. I'm in the process of trying to putting the chain onto the engine sprocket. Another exhaust is stopping me getting the engine in. That's good. So got that there. If you remember them witness marks earlier, they should still be there, hopefully. I didn't manage to find a new bolt to replace that bent one, so I'm going to have to use that bent one, like I mentioned earlier. And the original the original exhaust and engine didn't have a gasket for the exhaust port. So what I'm going to do is I'll basically put this on as a sealer to run up against the exhaust port and the pipe's exhaust port in order to create that seal. Just run that down a touch just for now. Just there. One and a half minutes. I need to adjust that chain, obviously. Just take the tension off it. Now I'm guessing these are part of the adjustment system too. loosen these off. I guess I'm going to say that's all the way in. Can't really tell because it covers it, but that may well be all the way in. And the top one's just a pivot. Again, a touch of play, not a lot. So what I'll do is I'll pop the chain back off for now, and I'll adjust that after. I'll align the engine after I've got 4 bolts in. It's not very for a kid's toy. You're not going to hold it. Come on. The expansion chambers catch on the frame. I have to put a bit of a dent in that frame. Let's offer it up, see where it's going to land. It lands very low. I have a feeling this exhaust will not work unless I cut it. I have to cut it and weld it, modify it. I have to turn it up. So that's where we're landing at the moment. And that's straight off the engine. There's a big drop down. I'm concerned about the swing arm itself. I mean, even at full droop, it clears. So it may well work. It's a dick. Right, I've got the engine in, I've got it mounted up. The old engine, I accidentally discovered what was actually wrong with it. Simply because I had to swap out the sprocket, because this sprocket was like 16 tooth and that's 11 tooth, which was putting unnecessary pressure on the actual chain. And in doing so, discovered that it's the clutch that was basically locked up. The springs had broke, a bit like in the mini Moto video that I did. Springs had broke and were locking it down. But the engine has really nice compression, and I believe that would actually start. But too little too late, I've already put this in. I've got the exhaust mounted. And if you come down here, you can see this is the sort of gap that I've got to bridge. That piece of material that I cut off ain't going to cut it, so I'm going to have to come up with some sort of revised idea for it. Try and get that over there. There's another issue where when I put this secondary pipe on, I slip that on there, it sits like way out here if you look from the top down. This one sits nicely under the frame, this one sits way over there. So I'm going to have to try and get that pipe bent in a touch, well, quite a lot to be fair, in order to mount it. Other issue is, well, yes, technically it does come in contact with this chain guard. It wouldn't cause any issues, but that's a problem with it being sat low. Like I said, that exhaust was basically an experiment. It will work once I sort out that secondary pipe. It will actually work, but until then, I'll get this finished, put back together, and then I'll start looking at making a bracket for that, and start looking at try to bend this pipe without causing any damage to it or restricting the flow of it. Keep it looking aesthetic. First off, I'll get these wires and I'll plug them in. These were both plugged into this wire here. I believe that's basically just the kill switch and the negative from the ignition. I'll put them over the top of that actually. Keep them somewhat up there out of the way. And this, instead of bolting it to this side like it was before, I'm going to actually bolt it to the clutch side if possible. No, I won't be able to do that, the exhaust is in the way. Never mind, I'll have to do the same thing where it's bolted onto there, which is a shame. because I don't really like it being there. That'll stay there. That will, for all intents and purposes, now start up. I just have to put some fuel in it. Put the key in it. Right, as soon as I've got some fuel in that, that will actually fire up. So I'll get some fuel and put it in. I put some fuel into that. The fuel tap is turned on. Just double check. Yeah, that's turned on. It'll take a couple of pulls to prime it. I've got the choke on. It's a fresh engine, so I did put a little bit extra two-stroke oil into the petrol. Nice. That only needs turning down a touch, but there you go. It runs. It's sweet. Now I've just got to make them brackets. Let me fasten these plastics up for now, because I'll be done with this part. Although I didn't really need to take them off, really, did I? But so let me fasten these 4 bolts up, and then I'll get back to you once I've basically made some brackets and bent that pipe somehow. If I can't bend it, then I'll just have to make a bracket, and it'll have to look a little bit odd, which is a shame. I do have to adjust one of the front brakes because it doesn't apply with just the handbrake. So I'll get on with that. I've been confused by. And not so great. The minute they get up against the metal, they dig in and they don't sort of overspin out. Got like a serrated back on them. And the minute you start adding pressure and it's trying to turn that way against a piece of metal, that sort of bites in and stops it spinning. So you don't even need a spanner on it. I also described the bracket wrong, the bracket's function. The bracket I chopped off the frame, it wasn't for the old exhaust. It's basically, some engines have like a bracket that sits there just above that clutch housing, and that's what goes up to it, and they're mounted from the top. Ideally, I'd say the amount of flex in that bottom plate, it could have done with having that bracket, but even the other engine did not have that bracket. For now, I'm just gonna, not a lot of pad left on that. That might be why it's not working. There's a bit more on that. Put hardly any on that. But I'll adjust it. Pull some extra cable through. Instead of adjusting on the handlebars. Just to make them work a bit better. In particular with that handbrake. Now, you see it's still spinning when the handbrake's on. The other wheel doesn't do that. There we go, and that's that done. I'm going to put that front end back on. And that's for now. Like I said, the next thing is sorting out the brackets for the exhaust, and then the rear end plastics can be put on, and that'll be job done.